Hello and welcome to my channel. The West must recognize its hypocrisy as many countries view the US and the European powers as selfish, self-satisfied and insecure. In theory, the West condemns hypocrisy. In practice, sadly, it indulges in hypocrisy massively. In this video, a man gives a very good answer for a question he was asked to say. A number of comments did object him using the general term the West, and they want him to be specific because there is no monolithic bloc called the West. They added to say it is an unfair generalization. Now guys, we all know that the Western world, also known as the West, primarily refers to various nations and states in the regions of Australasia, Europe and America, and we've grown up to know that they call themselves the West. But I'm surprised that they don't want to be called that. Now, to answer this question, a man in this video finds it strange that they don't want him to call them the West, a term they themselves came up with. People grew up hearing about how wonderful the West is, but they are only happy to take collective credit as the West for everything they feel is good, but for the bad things, they want to disassociate themselves from it. This is an interesting video and I would suggest you watch till the very end. Here is the video.
A number of comments have objected to you using the general term the West, and they want you to be more specific because there is no monolithic bloc called the West. It is an unfair generalization, they say.
You know, it's strange. If you think about it, it's strange that you don't want me to call you the West. You don't want everyone to be lumped together under that term. It's not my term, it's your term. I didn't come up with it, you did. You call yourselves the West. Western civilization. We all grew up hearing about how wonderful the West is. Western achievement, Western thought, Western enlightenment. You're happy to take collective credit as the West for whatever you think is good. But for the bad things, you want to disassociate yourselves from it. When you're talking about the bad things, then you're like, whoa, what West are you talking about exactly? Who do you mean by the West? The way you people tell the story, people like Douglas Murray or Jordan Peterson or Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins or Hitchens, Christopher Hitchens, all these types, you would think that every European on the continent participated in painting the Sistine Chapel. Everyone painting in shifts. All of you collectively invented penicillin, from the telephone to airplanes, from the cotton gin to the microchip. You all did that as one gigantic team effort. We, the West, abolished slavery. We, the West, gave women the right to vote. We, the West, developed modern technology. You like being called the West then, but just bring up just one of your innumerable atrocities, and then everyone starts looking around. Who, me? Oh, you must have me mistaken for some other person, some other West. Shaggy. It wasn't me. My forefathers didn't own slaves. My forefathers didn't slaughter the Native Americans. My forefathers were just poor, innocent peasants. I have nothing to do with it. Innocent as can be. You want to take collective credit, but you want to individualize blame. But you'll say that Isaac Newton, for example, is a product of the West. Michelangelo was a product of the West. Mozart was a product of the West. Leonardo da Vinci, Thomas Edison, Steve Jobs, they're all products of the West. But somehow your villains are all bastards. Illegitimate children that you don't want to claim. No. Hitler was your child. King Leopold was your child. Harry Truman was your child. A man who killed more people in a matter of seconds than anyone in the history of the human race. And not to mention every American president after Truman, from the Korean War to Vietnam to the dirty wars in Central and South America to Panama, the first and second wars in Iraq, Somalia, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, and before Truman. I don't think that the United States has had a single decade in its history when it wasn't slaughtering some people somewhere in the world. These are all products of Western civilization too. But anytime these crimes get brought up, you deny collective responsibility. I mean, if I try to list all of your crimes, I can't even remember them all. But if I try to list just the ones that I can remember, your battery will die before I can even properly get started. I saw a video the other day of Omar Suleiman. And he was asked by some lady, some woman, who asked him, why don't Muslims condemn acts of terror by Muslim criminals? And he was trying to be patient, his style. He was trying to be kind, he was smiling. a very forced smile, and he said, no, Muslims always condemn these things, but why don't you condemn when one of your people murders Muslims in a mosque? And of course he has a point, but also, of course they don't. Of course you don't condemn those things. You've got statues of Winston Churchill, who starved millions of Bengalis and who used poison gas on the Kurds. You not only don't condemn your terrorists, you not only don't try them for war crimes as they should be tried, you re-elect them into office. Not just elect them, re-elect them. And you deny any responsibility for their atrocities. No, if you want to be called the West, when it comes to any positive achievements, then you have to accept being called the West for all the full catalog of inhuman, vicious, murder, torture, bigotry, exploitation, oppression, assassinations, coups and subjugation, evil and brutality, all that your people have ever committed. That's why I always say Western civilization is a sarcastic term, because you never civilized. And, we made cool stuff is not a defense. Your approach to morality is, let's not and say we did. Let's not be moral, but say we are. You think that righteousness is denying the evil you do, not stopping yourselves from doing the evil.
Where is the West? The obvious question is west of what? Likewise, where is the East? Terms used in present-day geopolitics regularly make reference to an East and West, as in Far East and Middle East, as well as in Western ideas or attitudes. The obvious answer is that the West has something to do with Europe. If the area including Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Israel, Palestine, and Egypt is somewhere called the Middle or Near East, doesn't that imply that it is just to the east of something else? In fact, we get the original term from Greece. Greece is a center point east of the Balkan Peninsula was east. Now, west of the Balkans was west, and the Greeks were at the center of their self-understood world. Likewise, the sea that both separated and united the Greeks and their neighbors, including the Egyptians and the Persians, is still called the Mediterranean, which means sea in the middle of the earth. Latin, not Greek. We get the word from Elata, Western civilization, the Romans. The Asian civilizations clustered around the Mediterranean treated it as the center of the world itself, their major trade route to one another and a major source of their food as well. To the Greeks, there were two kinds of people, Greeks and barbarians. The Greek word is barbaros. Supposedly, the word barbarian came from Greeks, mocking the sound of non-Greek languages. Baba. The Greeks traded with all of their neighbors and knew perfectly well that the Persians and the Egyptians and the Phoenicians, among others, were not their inferiors in learning, art, or political organization, but the fact remains that they were not Greek either. Thus, one of the core themes of Western civilization is that right from its inception of the East being east of Greece and the West being west of Greece, and of the world being divided between Greeks and barbarians, there was an idea of who is central and superior and who is out on the edges and inferior, or at least not part of the best version of culture. In a sense, then, the Greeks invaded the idea of West and East, but they did not extend the idea to anyone but themselves, certainly including the people who inhabited the rest of Europe. In other words, the Greeks did not have a concept of Western civilization, just Greek versus barbarian. Likewise, the Greeks did not invent civilization itself. They inherited things like agriculture and writing from their neighbors. Neither was there ever a united Greek empire. There was a great Greek civilization when Alexander the Great conquered what they thought was most of the world, stretching from Greece itself through Egypt, the Middle East, as far as Western India, but it collapsed into feuding kingdoms after he was unalived. Now, thus, while later cultures came to look to the Greeks as their intellectual and cultural ancestors, the Greeks themselves did not set out to found Western civilization itself. As I was carrying out a research, I found another article titled A Thing Called Civilization, and the author wrote to say Western civilization has come in for a lot of attack because it's Western. The word Western has been taken to be a standard term of abuse by by so many people in the world today, and in particular by people who don't have the faintest idea what it means, historically, metaphysically, or poetically. Our Western civilization is not some peculiar, narrow, little obsession of people who happen to live in a certain geographical part of the world. It is an inheritance, constantly expanding, constantly including new things. It is something which has given us the knowledge of the human heart, which has enabled us to produce not just wonderful economies and the wonderful ways of living in the world that are ours, but also the great works of art, the religions, the systems of law and government, or the other things which make it actually possible for us to recognize that we live in this world insofar as possible successfully. Now, this article is making me question why Western countries don't want to be called the West, when this author clearly wants credit for the Western civilization. If they are not the West, then why is he generalizing it and calling it the Western civilization? It still goes back to what the man in this video said about them not wanting to be called the West, but they say Western civilization, Western achievement, Western thought, Western alignments, which they are happy to take credit of as the West. Now, I thought of checking out a few comments, and here are some of them. This one says, this guy speaks in volumes. He needs protection because we all know they are violent when called out. Europeans invaded nothing. They stole everything they said they invaded from natives. It is already here. The most accurate statement on Western ideology I've heard. Well said. As a white British woman, I'm so ashamed this man is speaking the truth. Okay, these are some of the comments, but honestly speaking, we've all grown up to know that they are called the West, and that they always say they invaded civilization. Them not wanting to be called the West when they themselves call themselves the West is crazy. I don't know about you guys. What do you think about this issue? Kindly share your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel.